We just watched Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Episode 4, The Great Wave. Thoughts?
I pretty much checked out a quarter of the way through this episode. It began to frustrate me because I was just watching a show and realized I just don't care about what they're putting on screen, and the writing felt very stiff. Like they're doing just the most basic job with the material. Like they're name dropping everything. Okay, good. Alright, now what's going on with the characters? Oh, nothing interesting, in my opinion. Some of the decisions made no sense. Like, we'll get into it later in the episode. I've got some thoughts on that. But basically, this episode comes down to a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm a little less harsh, but for basically the same reasons, it's about a 5 for me. Like, this show, we're halfway through the season now, and it hasn't picked up yet. So here's hoping, but, you know, my hopes are getting lower every episode. So let's get into it. We start with basically a rebellion in the courtyard. The guy who got beat up by that guy.
By Halbrand.
Halbrand.
Yeah. The Numenorian who got beat up by Halbrand is out there like being like, oh, the elves are here to, take our jobs, take our freedom. And it's such a typical, like, by the numbers scene, but we missed something, Rylan. The dream at the beginning. The queen has a dream or a vision that Numenor will be lost to a great wave, hence the name of the episode. And then we're quickly brought into the courtyard scene. And yeah, it just feels really stock, in my opinion.
Yeah, what stood out to me in a bad way was that the crowd was so one-dimensional. They're like, yeah, we don't want the elves to take our jobs. And then the
Buddy
other
comes
guy,
in and he's like, actually, this is what you guys should be thinking. Yeah, I'm with that guy. And then he like turns the whole crowd like around and back into the favor of like the queen and Numenor.
And then he brings wine out of nowhere.
Yeah, and then everyone's like drinking wine. It's like, yeah, let's go. But it's also just like, this is so basic and ridiculous.
Yeah, so we'll run through a bit more of the episode. Isildur gives up on his boat training, which I really don't know what they want us to think of the character of Isildur, because I feel like he's supposed to become a leader of men.
I think what they're doing is they're setting up that he can't follow through on things. Hence, like, when you get further into the series, potentially to where the beginning of the Lord of the Rings, like, movies and novels started, like, with the fight against Sauron, Isildur's supposed to cast the ring into the fire. He decides not to, right? And I think that's maybe why they're showing this. I
always read that scene more of corruption of the One Ring on someone rather than a reflection on Isildur's character.
He's already, weak. In a sense, so maybe that's also like a big reason. Like, yes, the ring possibly corrupted him, which I think that's what was alluded to in the movies, right? But I think they're showing like, oh, he's also just like, he doesn't have when he's not strongly convicted to do something, he won't follow through on it.
Yeah, it could be, but later on when they ask for volunteers, I thought that would have been a good moment for him to step up, but he is still just following other people's lead and not really making decisions, you know?
Yeah, it was supposed to be like, hoorah, like, let's go, Isildur. Like, he finally like getting what he wants. He decided that this is what I want to do. But yeah, he wasn't the first one to raise his hand. He was waiting for other people to like lead the way.
Yeah, it was like the friends raised their hand and it was like, why are they doing that? That makes no sense. You know, if it was like you gotta have a spark that catches fire for all the rest of the crowd to volunteer, should have been someone we were introduced to.
Yeah.
Jumping around a bit more, speaking of things that we were introduced to in Isildur's sister just randomly has this guy hitting on her. Where's that gonna go?
I don't know where it's gonna go, but that was the son of like the speaker for the queen, right? Like,
yeah. Farazan, I think, is his name.
Yeah, it's started with the P. Yeah, the names, that's also another thing, is like they're not doing a good job at introducing some of the new characters, like the ones that we're more unfamiliar with. Like, I don't think we've ever heard his name spoken. I only knew it because of the subtitles.
Yeah, we do watch the subtitles, which helps us remember a lot more names than we otherwise would have. Because, for example, the Queen of Numenor, I can't even with the subtitles, I don't remember.
It starts with an M.
There you go. But yeah, this son is just hitting on the sister for...
Who's now in the Builders Guild or whatnot.
Yes.
But it also doesn't play into anything. That's like, there's no, like, the setup is just not paying off anywhere throughout any of these episodes.
So the word that came to mind when that started happening was, oh, so this is the C plot. Okay, I get it.
It's the Z plot, bro. Like, this is just, it's so mundane and boring and has no purpose currently. Like, it's not even playing into its own episode. It's frustrating to me.
Yeah, I don't know. If we liked the characters more, maybe we would care about that C plot. Because that's the thing about a C plot. If it's not going to affect the main plot, like, right off the offset, it's got to at least be interesting. And it was only a couple scenes, but it was like, okay, so this is clearly happening for a plot reason. We don't know what that is, so why should we care at the moment? That's how I felt about that little nugget of a scene.
Pretty much, yeah.
B plot. I don't know if this is the B plot or the A plot, but the orcs.
With Arondir and the orcs and the humans.
And Adar. We meet Adar.
And he's a corrupted elf?
That's what it would appear. Yeah.
No other details. They mentioned something out of sequence. I do want to point this out. He says, "Why do the orcs call you father?" In the last episode, I don't believe they called him father at all.
No, but they did call him father in this episode.
Not before they talked to Arondir.
Yeah.
So before the discussion between Arondir and Adar, there is no mention of the word father from the orcs. And then later in the episode, you hear them say Lord Father. But that's like much later. So it's like, where did that come? I was confused. I was like, where did that come from?
So I believe in the lore, orcs are corrupted elves. And so I wonder if that's like the OG corrupt elf. That's my thought. Whether that's actually a thing within the lore, do not know. Would love to do some more research because the lore, as we've mentioned before, very, very interesting. The execution of the lore on screen, aka the Rings of Power, so far...
not very interesting at all.
Yeah.
It's almost a disservice to the world.
A couple things that didn't make sense was Galadriel goes away on the boat and then immediately comes back to Numenor about 2 seconds later after the leaves start falling off the white tree in just a hilariously bad execution of what was supposed to be a surprise that she's like actually back in town, even though it was just last scene, so it didn't even have time to set up.
Yeah, it was just like back to back, like, oh, she's gone, oh, she's back. Oh, this is an awkward ending, in my opinion.
Yeah. Things we liked about this episode?
The visuals are really good. The setting is really good. Like, basically everything besides the direction, the writing, and some of the stiff acting, but that kind of sometimes can go back to direction. Yeah, it's like everything but those elements is working.
Yeah, I would agree. The sets are really good. Visuals. The audio's not bad, like the music cues and stuff. It's not outrageously bad, which means it's good, because if you don't notice it, then at least it's good enough.
Yeah. It's... the one thing I'm finding is like they're playing a lot of music tracks throughout the episodes, and it is bordering on just standard fantasy track. But I don't know how you're supposed to make that stand out when it's just playing as a background.
Yeah, and I think if the scenes were more impactful, that might make the music more impactful. Like, they play off each other a little bit. And when one of them is down, it brings the other one down. In this case, the music. Because there's, like I said, nothing inherently wrong with the music. It just doesn't stand out. But that's because the scenes themselves don't stand out.
Yeah, so for this episode, another thing I liked was I thought the action was a lot better in this episode than previous.
Yes, much better action. Not as goofy.
Yeah, not as like outlandish or anime style like action, which it can work in live action, but the execution, obviously, last episode I didn't think was very good. But like the fight in the forest with Arondir and the orcs, say what you want about what was occurring, like the reason it was occurring, but the actual like shots of him shooting arrows and everything. Like, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. On that note, though, they sent Arondir back to the humans with all his weapons.
Fully equipped. Out there, like, they gave him so many weapons that he could just, like, murk the orcs that they also send out there to find the humans. So it's like, I'm very confused about the motivations of, like, this Adar, because, like, why would he give him the weapons? And
yeah, also,
or did
like,
he pick them up? But that's also, like, that's just a headcanon, like, assumption.
Yeah, and if they're gonna send a messenger, why did it have to be Arondir? Because the humans don't like elves. We saw that in episode 1. So what about Arondir would make them trust him when they're equally likely, from all we know about these humans, to trust Adar himself? You know?
Yeah, they would take the word of Adar and Arondir almost the same.
Yeah, especially given what we saw with that old tavern keeper and Theo, that little conversation about, when Sauron returns, we'd best be ready.
I want to get into that. So I know that we're all over the place, but that's fine because, man, this episode was rough. But so Theo is this child human, and he has the hilt of some, I believe it's like the blade of Sauron or something, like, I don't know, something related to Sauron. And at first it looks like a hilt. If he stabs himself, it becomes a full blade. It's got magical properties. And he's trying to, like, conceal it in a bag. And this old guy comes over. He's like, I know you have the blade, boy. You took it from me. And they start talking about it. And he's like, where did it come from? Basically, he just ends up being like, it's Sauron's. And Sauron's going to return. And then the kid's like, who's Sauron? And, like, what should we do about this? I can't tell you right now. Because that's the plot of season 1. Like, that's what it felt like. It was like, we're not gonna finish, like, talking about this. We'll talk about it later because we gotta keep the audience in suspense.
Yeah, there wasn't even a bad reason for him to leave that scene. There was just no
Like,
reason.
No one came to interrupt them. No one was eavesdropping. Like,
if the mom came and was like, hey, Theo, like, let me look at that wound of yours or something, you'd be like, oh, okay, the conversation had to stop because...
like a natural ending.
Yeah, it was like, well, what do we have to be ready for? Oh, I can't tell you that.
We'll talk about it in 3 episodes. And I think there was, like, another part. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, it was like, we gotta do this thing. Oh, what is it? Well, I can't do it now because we gotta, and I said something along the lines of, because we're gonna follow it up in season 3, you know, like, just one of those stupid things where it's like, you know, that it's like setting something up, but it's like they're not setting up the interesting questions. Like, all the interesting questions that they've brought up, they resolve them, like, right away. Like, for example, a couple episodes ago when Galadriel was in that tower and they're, like, looking at the Hall of Lore, and she asks a question and then immediately solved it, and it was like, wait, what? But all the mundane questions they keep us on the hook for, which I don't like.
The only one they're keeping us on the hook for that I think is interesting is the emergence of Sauron as a character. When's he going to come and who's he going to be? Because you know he's a deceiver, and you know he's going to be someone, not him, like, he's not going to appear as himself at first.
But I believe they straight up just confirmed that's whatever came out of the comments, the stranger.
Now, I wasn't sure about that because I thought the implication was the comet signals the arrival of Sauron, not the comet is Sauron. So there's potential, because remember last episode they said the same thing about Adar, and there is no indication that
Adar could be another name for Sauron. Yeah.
So what I was talking to you about before we started recording was the possibility that they leave these questions on the table past the season finale, and in the writer's room, they just do a little research and they say, oh, well, you know, fans reacted to the potential red herring one way, but they liked this potential Sauron character even more, so why don't we go with that, like, please the crowd. So I wonder if they're going to make writing decisions based on the reaction to season 1, which is never a good way. Like, it doesn't matter if your vision is good or bad, at least it's consistent, but I fear that that might not be the case moving forward with Sauron's reveal. I hope, you know, they're consistent in what they were planning from the start.
Well, one thing I'm finding when I end up reading articles from the showrunners or the writers or people involved with the show is that they're focusing so heavily on the things that are not important to the actual quality of the show. Like, you'll hear headlines about, oh, the fan base is outraged about, this character, or outraged about this decision that they made in the casting. I think we all know what I'm alluding to, but that doesn't have any consequence to the story that they're telling,
Yeah, it doesn't make the show good or bad on its own.
Yeah, and like them hyper focusing on that, it's like they're trying to put that in the news so that people are thinking more about that than is this show good or bad based on the writing or its own merits.
Yeah, like, are you saying they're using it almost as a shield to deflect criticism?
In a way, yes.
Yeah, which, I mean, there are a lot of fans out there who are hating on the show for the wrong reasons, but I think there's a larger majority, potentially, I don't go into the online discussions very much, who, don't like the show for its writing.
As someone, okay, it's just as someone who's like a little bit more casual with the show, like I haven't gone on to any of like the forums or anything to read what people think about the episode, because I like to, when we come and do this recording, I like to have more of an open mind and not be pushed down, see other opinions and be influenced by that. So all I'm really seeing is these mainstream articles of like them talking about those other things and not necessarily the show. It's like what's happening in the show. So maybe it's just the channels and like the I don't know, the media feed I have.
Yeah, I mean, those articles, I think, get pushed to the top because of the content, so it could be a case of, that's what gets the most eyes, so that's what you see. So there might be other articles out there discussing the content itself, but, I mean, I haven't seen those myself either, so I can't say for sure.
Yeah, but, I think we're both in agreement here that, like, we don't care about, like, those other external factors, we just care about, like, what they're doing in their own show, like the writing, like we care about like how are these characters being written, like how is the show coming together on its own. And I think that's kind of where we come from, is like that's why we're frustrated, because one episode is good, one episode's bad, and then it becomes like difficult to assess the show, and they're almost fast tracking certain elements in the episodes to be like, okay, we gotta get to these Lord of the Rings, and like then all the stuff that should be slow and plotting skipped over.
Yeah. Speaking of skipping over, one thing I don't want to forget was the dwarves were back at this episode. Thank goodness for the dwarves, because without the dwarves, this would have been like a 3 for me, but they at least had Durin and Elrond, which was like, thank goodness for that, because again, good scenes with those characters. I thought Durin's anger at his father and Elrond being able to calm him down was like good stuff. And then the conversation between the dwarf king, whose name I'm not sure of, and Durin, his son, was also really like heartfelt, and then also set up a few of the like potential plot lines for the next episode, where Durin's gonna go to Eregion to check on the construction and see what's really up with Celebrimbor, and like what does he have up his sleeve, because not everything seems up to snuff according to the dwarves, which it probably isn't from what we know of the lore.
Yeah, it's like that storyline is the most interesting, I think, because it's taking its time. It's, the setups make sense. It's like they're starting to go into questions that, are kind of in the back of your mind when you're watching it, because like through their conversations, you can see like, oh, there's some mistrust. And that's where things are interesting. Like, I don't care about them necessarily like fighting Sauron again. Like, I know that's where it's going, but I want them to spend time on the minutia of, like, what's going on in Middle-earth, and that is, like, the dwarves building the things with the elves. That's a good, it's well-written, and it's interesting.
Yeah, and I thought there could have been even more.
There could have been more in this episode about that.
Like, with the mining collapse, I thought maybe if we were introduced to the dwarven miners, given a face to... If they were given a line or two...
Add some drama to it.
Yeah, it would have added some intensity to when Disa is doing the singing, and you're like, man, I really hope those characters we saw aren't dead, instead of like, oh, those nameless, faceless dwarves. Hopefully they didn't die. But the way Durin reacted kind of brought that emotional element. So that was good, too. And then we confirmed what we thought in episode 2, which is Mithril is the substance that they are mining, the secret that they have. which, makes sense why they want to keep it a secret. It'll become like the strength of their society if they can mine it effectively. And I wonder how that's going to come into play, especially the little nugget that Elrond got. I'm sure he's going to break his promise and give it to Celebrimbor as like here, try smithing something out of this. It's this new material. And he's going to make something and the dwarves aren't going to be happy about it.
It's going to be one of those scenes where he's so conflicted and he's like, and Celebrimbor's like, we're on the verge of a breakthrough. And Elrond is like, I know I promised Durin, but we got to for the greater good, right? And he gives it over. And then Durin's like, I can't believe you would give this to the elves. And then there's the mistrust. Which
would actually be heartbreaking because like Elrond and Durin are good together.
Yeah, but knowing the trajectory of this show, that's happening at the last episode.
Oh, man.
Of season 1.
Oh, man.
So much potential.
So much potential. That'd be good. That would be emotional if, like, that caused a rift, a permanent rift between Elrond and Durin.
And then it would also go into the Middle Earth at large with the dwarves and elves not getting along.
Yeah, and then, like, why aren't the dwarves fighting Sauron as well? Well, maybe that's why.
Yeah, and Durin eventually becomes king, and then he decides, no, we're out of it. We don't want to help the elves. They're no good.
Yeah, and I thought I don't know, like, I'm not 100% sure where they're going with Durin's character, but I thought they could have played into more of the, like, he's being a bit greedy about Mithril or short-sighted with the mining of it and how dangerous it is, because he backed off pretty quickly when he went to talk to his father. Whereas I think if he was a little more insistent that like, oh, Mithril is like this great thing and we absolutely need to continue, that would play into the like Mines of Moria's downfall.
Yes, the nuggets would be planted and the seeds would be planted for that.
Yeah, so I think that's where they're going. Again, could be wrong, but if they are, I think they need to sow the seeds a little bit more with Durin's character. That being said, I'm no complaints about him. I think what sells me on his character is like the interactions with Elrond, but also like the character design and the clothing and all that really makes it feel like part of the world, like organic, versus like the humans in the Southlands. They're literally just wearing rags.
They're relatively generic, yeah.
Like, I thought Theo especially just had a really unfortunate costume this episode. He was just wearing the loosest rags
most
ever.
Peasant clothing. And it's like, I get it. They're not supposed to be like this super well-off area. But you could at least give them a little bit more distinct than like sack of potatoes clothing with some rope.
Well, like when they were carrying the literal sacks of potatoes, I'm like, man.
That's not far off from what he's got.
Yeah, looks the same. I think we've covered pretty much everything except the Palantir.
Yes. Okay, so the Palantir is the orb. It's one of 7 seeing orbs. And this one kind of ties back to, if you remember from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Saruman had one of these. And I believe it might be the same one.
There's potential that it's the same one, but I would have no way of knowing myself. Now, I believe in Lord of the Rings, Saruman got corrupted because Sauron also had a Palantir and was speaking to him through it.
Yes.
So it's possible that could happen here as well.
Is it possible that's why the king is sick in Numenor, if it ties back? Or is this just one of those things that doesn't matter?
Yeah, I wonder too if it's just one of those, not necessarily a MacGuffin, but just like an item that they introduce so that a character can have a vision. Where it's like, see, you remember this from the lore. It gives people visions. All right, that's all you need to know. Not bringing it up again.
I don't see it coming back.
No.
Especially with the Numenorians. Now, I think they're going to move away from Numenor. Using that as the set, I think we're going to Middle-earth now.
See, I wonder about that because the character of Pharazan, I'm gonna continue mispronouncing that. His kid and Isildur's sister have that sea plot going on. It's got to be wrapped up.
All right, here's my theory about this. She's a builder, right? They go over to Middle Earth. She's working with Celebrimbor.
Okay,
trust me, it's gonna happen. That's where I see that going. Or it's just nothing.
I think it was just a way of giving Numenor a plot that's not based on Galadriel, so that when Galadriel leaves,
they'll just keep cutting back to it.
They'll keep cutting back to it, and we'll get more, like, not world building, but plot elements in Numenor, because it'll play into the bigger plot of the whole story. Now, my question with Numenor, too, is they're going off to fight Sauron. Wasn't the whole issue of episode 1 that Galadriel didn't find Sauron?
Oh, the issue was that she was too driven to find Sauron, and then didn't find Sauron, and then now she's still convinced that they need to go find him.
Yeah, so they got this army of volunteers, and they're going to Middle-earth. But where are they gonna go? Like,
they're going to the Southlands to take care of the orc situation, but
they don't know about the orc situation, unless that's what Hallbrand was talking about.
That's what he talked about when they were
That's
adrift.
where he's from?
Yes.
Is like, see, I didn't really, like, I think I knew that's kind of what they were going with, but I didn't really feel like they tied that together. Like, Arondir's setting is the same as Hallbrand's origins. I thought Hallbrand was like a different area of the Southlands for some reason, because they don't talk about having a king or anything.
I mean, the Southlands they're not small, so he could be from like another part of the Southlands, but he is just a commoner, so...
Or is he a king? Or is he Sauron? We don't know.
A king among men. That's what he is right now. You know, like, he's just in hiding or not going to take it up.
I don't know. If they make him it's really confusing because they haven't decided if he's a king or not, or at least if they did, they didn't make it obvious. And like,
what part of me during this episode started to think, well, maybe he's lying about the whole king angle with Galadriel for whatever reason they come up with,
because he's Sauron,
and maybe I could see them going with it's not real, because then it would be like just a callback to Aragorn, right? And then they go, but we're not going to do that again.
We're better than that.
We're better than rehashing that. But I don't know. It's so hard to tell like where they actually want to go besides make a ring, make a couple of rings, you know?
Yeah. And the thing about those, like, things that they're setting up, like the red herrings, is that there's so many of them. I'm not sure what we're supposed to believe right now. Like, or
what we're supposed to get excited for the plot of the season, or... Yeah, like, the direction is just a little murky.
Now, I'm hoping, even though it'd be kind of dumb, but, like, sometimes a dumb thing has to happen for good things to happen later, is that the Numenor plotline and the Orc plotline will reconnect and bring some characters together, and it'll be a little fresh, you know, and maybe set the show in
different
a new direction.
Team-ups, new direction. I would like that. I think that's one of the better outcomes from that. That could come from that.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'm thinking the orcs are going to attack that little watchtower with all the humans in it, and then at the exact same time, Galadriel's going to roll up.
All hope is lost. And Galadriel and the Numenorians pull up, and it's the battle of the season.
Oh my god. I hope that's not like the end. If it takes 4 episodes to get to that, that's going to be a slow burn. That's going to be a slow burn, but we're probably not going to get more orc stuff next episode, because... we
got to go back to the Harfoots.
The Harfoots, yeah. They're going to take somebody's spot. Yeah, I hope
it better not be Elrond and Durin.
I was just gonna say the same thing.
If I gave this one a 4, we have no Elrond and Durin to save some of it. All hope is lost, my friend.
That being said, we're still gonna watch to the season's end.
Yeah, we're in it for at least this season. So
yeah, a couple small things. The hilt turns into a blade when he gets stabbed by it. Why? Is it just because it's a magical hilt? Magic hilt. Evil. Nice. Blood magic, right?
Blood magic, yes.
There we go. That's how you know it's evil. The Galadriel escaping from jail was goofy.
Straight up ridiculous. And for almost it was super unnecessary.
Yeah, just...
And then she becomes just master rock climber, climbs the whole tower, busts through the window... Just for them to have a dramatic conversation and agree with each other.
Yeah. And I thought...
It was so many steps just to get to one conversation. They could have had that conversation arrested and on her way out. Or the first time that they were discussing the father and stuff, like she could have been like, don't talk about my father. I have something to show you. Da-da-da-da-da. They go off to the what was it, Palantir, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have done that earlier, and then the intrigue builds of, oh, is this Great Wave going to come? No, the Great Wave is them leaving Numenor. Like, I don't know. There's just so many different ways you could have done it differently and more interesting.
And I thought something they could have done different with the Palantir scene was the queen could have, instead of showing her the vision, you could have demonstrated the power of the Palantir with it being like, no, you shouldn't touch it because it will like wreck you, so I will tell you what happens were you to touch the Palantir.
She goes to touch it, there's like the whispering sounds of like ominous evil.
Yeah.
Don't touch it. This is what I foresaw. Something along those lines. Like, I don't know, just think about it.
And then it could have gotten more emotion out of the queen where she's explaining, like, I'm trying to prevent the downfall of my people. I'm desperate. That's why I'm scared of the elves coming, because I think they could be the great wave that comes to sweep us away. And then it would have given the queen more character rather than just more plot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we would have gotten the plot of like, oh, Numenor's about to fall. Instead, we got the vision twice in the same episode. Like, as an audience, we already saw the vision. We didn't need it a second time. So it could have been, you know, the explanation to Galadriel from the queen, an opportunity to characterize the queen a bit
and
more.
And show how
it's
it's impacting her.
Sympathetic and, yeah, exactly. How, you know, tie the plot to the characters a bit more. Genius stuff, I know. Genius. But we got what we got, and that's why you gave it a 4 and I gave it a 5. So, yeah.
Hoping for the best next episode.
Hoping for more dwarves, expecting some Harfoots, and maybe the stranger will have like a proper sentence this time.
Yeah, I think that the stranger is actually going to be a key element of the next episode.
Well, episode 5, something better start happening with the stranger.
Alright, well, those were just our thoughts on Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Season 1, Episode 4, The Great Wave. If you guys have any comments or anything you would like to discuss with us, leave it in the comments section down below. If you liked our discussion, leave us a like with the like button. And if you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. We will be back with the next episode next week.